campaign tobacco, and what roles did flavors play in that, if any?
Okay. What first drew me to tobacco was definitely a friend influence. That's my main thing. And then flavors, definitely whenever they started marketing like more flavors that I actually like fruits and just stuff like that, that was what really led me.
Yeah, I think flavors, of course, a lot of us here know how big of an issue those have been, how, that's specifically marketed to youth. When we go to like Campaign Tobacco Free Kids work, I have a question for you. With over 15,500 e-cigarette flavors, if my number's right, I think that's from the CDC, and on the market, and the FDA has authorized over like 34 products that are flavored, what steps are being taken at the national level to protect youth from these flavors?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, first of all, the 15,000 plus flavors that are on the market, none of those are authorized by the FDA. So the only products, we have 34 products that are authorized. The majority of them are tobacco flavored. At the end of last year, we had a handful of menthol flavored products be authorized. So any flavored product that you see in a gas station, on a shelf, in a smoke shop, none of that has been approved or authorized and really is illegal, right? So who's in charge for enforcing that? That's the FDA, right? So we have a system in place. We have a good system in place. We have good rules. We have good laws. What we're lacking in is enforcement. So I think that's important to point out. The other thing is we're in a new presidential administration. So with all administrations, things change. You kind of have to start over, re-educate. But one of the things that we're currently working through at the federal level are some of the cuts that have been made to FDA and to the CDC, specifically the Office on Smoking and Health. And so unfortunately, right now, it's, we have a landscape where enforcement was difficult. I think when you have an absence of the people who are supposed to be enforcing, that makes it even more difficult. So at the federal level, the Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids and a lot of our public health partners, the American Heart Association, Cancer and Lung, we're working really hard to educate Congress as to why these things are really important. And so, I mean, I hate to say it's kind of TBD. We have a good system in place, but it's going through some massive changes right now. And so, we're just continuing to remind Congress why these things are important, what the impact is on kids, and that we already have an illicit market problem, right? So we're, having to deal with that. So, good question.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for speaking up to Congress. Hopefully we'll see changes made, and and my last question in this kind of section is for Brooke. What changes have you seen specifically when young people stand up, share their story, get involved in voice in the movement and activism?
Thank you. I'll for sure say start off. It shows that we're not afraid to speak up for our generation. I mean, the future is in our hands, truly. As you can tell, we all have a bright future, but truly, we're the ones making the impact where we want that to be. And it also kind of backtracks because I think a lot of people expect the adults to step up and take action. They don't really expect to see kids, at the State House and speaking up for what we want to see in our lives. Like I said, the future is in our hands. So we have to be socially and culturally aware. We have to know what's going on in the legislative and the policy processes and all the changes because, again, it's in our hands. If we don't speak up now, that kind of shows us how nothing's going to really change if we don't actually speak up for what we want to see in the future.
Yeah, I think work like this, or even just being here, making yourself aware of issues like this is really important. So thank you guys all for being here. I think it's important that we have community discussions like this with so many different perspectives of the same issue and kind of how we each in our own way are finding, whether it's sharing our story, working with Congress, we're finding ways to make change for a better, healthier society for all of us. So yeah, I'm gonna actually go back to you, Carrie. I know you already shared kind of about how your organization is working on the national level, but how are they working to hold the industry, specifically the industry, accountable?
Sure. Another great question. I kind of mentioned some of the federal gridlock that we're dealing with, right? Not really understanding what these cuts or downsizing measures mean to enforcement. And so that kind of causes our shift to be more on states, right? And really targeting, kind of hyper-targeting members of Congress that we think could be potentially helpful, not just friends, but also trying to make new friends, right, in a new landscape. So one of the things that we're doing is we've launched a nationwide kind of media campaign in specific U.S. Senate and U.S. congressional districts where we're trying to help, again, educate, about the importance of these issues. And actually, Indiana has one Congress member that we're trying to make our friend, which is Congressman Mervin. And so I think, the work that you guys are doing here then becomes not more relevant, but like you can see why that work that you're doing is incredibly relevant, right? So when national organizations have to reach out and try to build relationships with members of Congress, the work that's happening in those members' district and the work that's happening, with youth in that member state becomes incredibly important at highlighting, hey, this is important, but also you have constituents that care about this, right? Like this isn't just, some national, esoteric organization, coming and telling you what policies you need to be making. Like this is an issue in your community that is getting the attention of your constituents. And so that's one of the ways, that we're doing it. And again, just back to, just pounding the pavement in DC, right? And continuing to push back against industry tactics. Right now, we're in the process of working on a national budget, right? So that's a huge document. It's gonna have lots of implications, not just for funding, but also for policy. And we know the kind of perennial issues that come up in Washington, D.C. from the industry are trying to completely take away the authority of the FDA to regulate these kind of things, strip it of the authority to potentially in the future prohibit menthol, right? That was a big conversation under the Biden administration. Also prohibit the FDA from being able to set any kind of nicotine level or standard. So those are the kinds of things that we're always having to look, at the nitty-gritty and massive pieces of legislation and work to get that stuff either pulled out or not put in. So it's kind of twofold, right? Like we're trying to be present by way of a media campaign and working with state partners on very specific targeted members of Congress, and then of course continuing to pay attention and be present and work against things that might pop up in things like our budget bill.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us, like even though of course we don't have we can't really work with you on that level, we still like kind of grassroots campaigning type things. And I think when we look at grassroots campaigning, I'm gonna go to you, Lydia. How do you think like storytelling and creative work are helping to spark change around these issues like youth tobacco use?
Yeah, I'm so embedded in the arts that it feels just like, yes, of course the arts are so important for activism, so important for storytelling, so important for building awareness and kind of putting human faces to kind of big numbers, right? I think you all did a great job in the film just highlighting and interviewing folks, and then we saw that like, these are real people, these are real stories, and I really think that this saves lives. On a very personal note, my dad died of lung cancer, and he smoked in his youth, and he gave up eventually. But I felt really compelled by this film because I think that the work that you all did to kind of pull this together can help save some people in the future. And artists around the world do this kind of work. They use their voices, whether it's through film, storytelling, visual arts, to convey messages, to kind of bring awareness to issues. And sometimes that scares people. Sometimes artists get targeted for being too loud, right? And I would just say keep using your voices. It's working. So yeah.
Thank you. Jetta, I want to go to you. So obviously, your storytelling was important. You were one of the first people that we had come up and say, I want to get involved, I want to share my story. Can you talk about the hardest part of quitting and what kept you motivated to quit?
So the hardest part of quitting was definitely the influence, like I said, around me. It's a really big thing in schools, really popular in schools. I'm from a small town with nothing but cornfields around us, so there's not I could have quit if I really put my mind to it, but once I finally did, it was really great. But what I strive to quit would have been I actually went through the Truth app, so that was a really big thing for me. So I follow them quite regularly, so to youth, that's what I would definitely use.
Yeah, I think it's important we know, we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of resources out there that we can share, a lot of numbers or hotlines like truth or like quit now lines that we can use. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm gonna pass it to you, Elena. Can you share with us, obviously it's important that we have people in our community that are empowering youth to quit or, you know, to take that stance against tobacco. Do you have a specific event or activity that you feel like made an impact on you specifically or your community, your school?
Yeah, so I would say an event that I think really made like a lasting impact on not only me, but I think the whole community is in Spencer County. We had a community wellness forum, and at this forum we had like a resource fair where everybody could come to all these different businesses and like different groups, and then they like handed out resources to people who needed it, and just really shared some like amazing like facts about tobacco and nicotine products and truly what is in them and truly how they affect us. And the also other main portion of this was that we had a program where we had a bunch of different groups come up and like share different facts and information. And so for me specifically, I was with Voice and I spoke, and I mainly spoke about like the vaping epidemic and truly how much is truly affecting everyone, and like not just the person who is vaping and like how it's affecting them, but also like everyone around them, their family members, their friends, and just on how we need to work to help those that are struggling and not just like leave them aside. And then I think really the impactful part of it though was that just the amount of people that came up and were shocked about like the facts and the information and just didn't truly realize the gravity of how much it affects so many people. And then specifically, after the event, there was one attendee that reached out and decided to take a quit kit to stop smoking, so I thought that was awesome. And it was just awesome to see a bunch of other people came up and later on and asked for help and like different resources. And so for me, I think it was the first time I really saw like how Voice truly is able to make an impact on like the community. And then for me, it was my first time like speaking, I think, in front of a big crowd for Voice. There was like 140 people, I believe. And so for me, it was just awesome to see how much like our role is able to impact and inspire so many people. So yeah, and then I just want to go back real quick on my last thing, because I feel like I got a little nervous. So I'm going to go back and make sure you all understand, because it's really important. So the way that Voice fights against the marketing of nicotine products is by, we want to get stricter regulations, we want to get a ban to all sales to minors, and just all the restrictions on flavored products, and limiting the advertising and marketing that is sent out. And we just want to make sure that lawmakers can try to help us to pass measures in order to get the bans on, so that way youth can't even get started originally in the first place. And Voice, I think, kind of like I said before, with the Spencer County community work that we did, Voice really helps to educate and empower students to recognize the tactics that marketing strategies use and to understand that they're lying to us and they're trying to get us to fall into their tricks.
Yeah, I think that work is really important. And I wanted to highlight, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure a lot of you do, Voice is a youth empowerment brand who we work to our 3 E's, engage, educate, and empower youth to live tobacco and nicotine free. So I think the engagement work and education you've done has obviously been really impactful for your community. Brooke is also a Voice Youth Ambassador, so I'm gonna go over to her with the kind of the same question. Can you share like what community event or activity has been impactful for you specifically?
Yeah, and it's hard to say because like I joined Voice, my sophomore year, and I'm a senior this year, so I've definitely had a few years of experience with this. And every event that we do, big or small, has an impact. Like Elena said, she only knows that one person took a quick hit from that event, but you don't know how many people came up afterwards and talked to someone in private and got help. And even just knowing that that one person was able to get help from this event with over 140 people makes it worth it for us because we were able to affect one life. And so for me, I would say it's our junior high presentations where we go in and we speak to our students, not only, like Elena said, tell them about how that big tobacco is targeting them specifically, but having fun with them and building the connections. Because yes, it seems so minor and that we're just educating them, but those connections are what matter. You don't know if you're that one person that gets through to that student and is able to make a difference in their life. And so kind of reflecting back on that, we hear from our adult allies and our counselor who leads over us, And then we hear about the kids who come and ask for help afterwards. We talk about how we were able to get through to them, make them feel comfortable enough to come up and ask for help when they may not have family or friends around that they can talk to because maybe the family and friends are feeding into their addiction. So for me, that's definitely the most monumental, I would say, impact that I've seen in our work with the community.
Thank you, that was really good, yeah. And Carrie, I think a lot of us, of course, voice with Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. We had the Take Down Tobacco National Day of Action on April 1st. Tobacco is a joke, but your life isn't. So I kind of want to just talk to you, like, can you share anything with us specifically about Indiana's success, or like how we were able to make an impact in the state as well, if you'd like to share that.
No, that's a good question. So I had the privilege of attending your youth day at the State House, which was amazing. And I can tell you not every state has that. You know, there are some states that do a bang-up job. Indiana is one of those states. There's other states that the youth aren't engaged like you guys are. So kudos to you for holding that organization together and for the leaders, you know, that are helping you do that. But that really matters. Like, I mean, you may not think it matters, but it really does. You know, I'm a lobbyist, registered a couple states. You know, I talk to legislators all the time, and usually if I'm a good lobbyist, when I come, they know what I'm coming for, right? So it's like, oh, she comes again, she's gonna tell us this is what we need to do, this is why we need to do it, you know, blah, 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 blah. But when youth show up, it's a completely different conversation, you know, and it's a lot harder, I think, for policymakers to say to youth or to dismiss youth, you know, that no, this isn't what you're experiencing, you know, no, this isn't what, you know, really needs to be done to help you, you know, in your day-to-day life. And so being present, I think, is incredibly important for today, but it's also incredibly important for the future, right? Because when I see you guys, it's like, all right, we're gonna be okay, right? Because a lot of the day is filled with just kind of feels like a gut punch after a gut punch, right? Like you have all of the data, you have all of the things, you know, you're telling the stories, and a lot of times lawmakers seem kind of indifferent or too busy or don't, you know, want to push back against maybe the political pressure that they would face, you know, to step out on these kinds of issues. But you guys not only represent an important voice in the current conversation, but you represent the ability and the agency and the engagement for the future. Which is huge, you know. So I, you know, the work that you guys are doing is just incredibly important. You know, I know I'm here in part to talk about kind of the federal space and what we need to be doing there. But the truth is that this problem requires action on all different levels, all at the same time, right? It requires action face-to-face with middle schoolers. It requires action with your local city council or county commission. It requires action with your state policymakers, you know, and your federal policymakers all at the same time. And I think the biggest weapon that we have in those spaces is true community engagement and voice, which is what you guys are. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of hands, especially in the field of public health and advocacy, to get work done. So I think all of you have had really valuable things to share. I think we have a lot of power and passion to, you know, keep making strides in this field. And so I'm kind of going to get to some closing statements. I was going to just, sorry, my notes are all crazy today. I don't even know what the papers are doing. But my first question for Jetta is, if you have to give advice to like someone who is struggling or, you know, is trying to figure out like what's the best way to get started in my quit journey, what would you tell them?
I would definitely tell them to keep going. It's never too late to quit. It's never too late to stop until it is. That's my biggest statement, I would say. And like I also said in the video, that was also another one, the ending statement.
Yeah. For our ambassadors who are doing a lot of education work, what do you think is one thing, if any teen had to know, like in your school when you were going to do a presentation, what is one thing you would want them to know about tobacco and nicotine products?
I think about like the marketing, that they display them, especially like e-cigarettes or vapes, as like a safer alternative. And the truth is that they're not, and it's just the marketing strategies trying to show all the fun flavors and all the fun colors that are like shown in the marketing tactics to try to get you to want to buy them and to try to think that they're better for you when they're not. And I just think that people need to understand that truly e-cigarettes also have so many metals and toxic solvents, and there's so many harmful substances in there that it's not better for you, and it can cause you many health problems in the future, just like smoking can.
Thank you. Brooke, I'm gonna ask you the same question. What do you think, if you had to share one thing, what would you share with someone who was trying to quit, struggling to quit, or just simply needed to know the truth?
Yeah, I mean, that's so hard because there's so much I can say, but I guess something I'll say is there's always a better out. No matter how hard it feels, you and your life matters, and it's truly never worth it to sell yourself with tobacco nicotine products.
Yeah, I agree. And Lydia, your closing statements, what advice would you give to young artists who, wanted to use their voice to make a stance in not just really tobacco prevention, but also, other fields of advocacy or other areas where, we want to work towards strides towards better legislation, laws, etc.
Yeah. I think I just want to echo you that when I see young folks today, I do feel like we're going to be okay because you are so powerful and so outspoken, and just please keep doing that and use the arts to do that. I think when we have really difficult problems like substance use in the world, it really requires a lot of creative thinking and a lot of creative solutions. So the more creative you can be, the better. Creativity doesn't dry up like a well. It actually just kind of grows. It continues to grow and propagate. So use art to tell your story. Use art as a way to stay healthy and well and keep you engaged. I see people doing this in Washington County right now. They have family nights where they make art together as a way to kind of bond and have something to do, instead of turning to a substance to try to fill that void. So we have this need to be creative and just keep going, keep doing it.
You're powerful. You heard that, okay? Carrie, last question. What specific Indiana legislation do you believe could make the biggest impact on us right now, tobacco prevention?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things, just to kind of give you guys some context, about half of the states in the country are what we call preempted. And what that means is local communities are not allowed to enact or enforce tobacco control policies. Now that's different in states, there's different types of preemption, certain things are preempted, certain things are not, but what that does then is make the state legislature the only body that can really decide, how tobacco is gonna be controlled in that state. Indiana is one of those states, so there are some things here that you can't do locally, which makes it, difficult, right? Because now you're much more focused and you're in a space that just is completely different types of calculations that are happening. So, there's, in the context of Indiana, I think one of the biggest things that people here on the ground in this space are fighting for right now is an increase on tobacco. Tobacco tax is not like a super sexy topic. It's not. People's eyes glaze over. It's very complicated. It's kind of boring. It's, you have to spend a lot of time explaining to people why it matters and why it actually translates to better health outcomes. But the truth is, it does, right? The most single policy tool that we have to decrease use and give that state better health impacts on the other side is through making the product more expensive, right? Youth are price sensitive, right? If you have a job, you're probably not making much.
Poor.
Yes, you're poor. Yes, you're poor. And so if we can make products a little more expensive, right? Perhaps it will deter initiation. And actually data shows that it does. And not only deters, but it also gives people kind of that opening or that opportunity to go, hey, maybe I don't want to do this, right? Maybe I want to quit, this is absurd. My paycheck is $100 and I just spent half of it on, a product that makes me feel like crap, So that is something that is, I think, really important. Indiana's cigarette tax is only 96 cents, 97 cents. It's under $1, which is really low, very, very low. So, I think getting that raised would have a huge impact for the state of Indiana, and that's something that people on the ground are actively working right now in the state legislature. So hopefully we'll have some success. Yeah.
Wow, that was the end of my questions. Thank you guys for all of your insight. Can we give a round of applause? Thank you. Okay. I'm gonna open it up up to specific audience questions. So we can run a mic to you, or if you feel like you're loud enough, you can shout. If you think you don't need a mic, you got it, girl. Yeah, go for it.
I wanted to ask Jenna, when you quit, did that inspire any of your friends to quit too?
A few, not very many. So, it's really hard. I mean, being in a small school because it's really around. I actually go to school with Colin down here, and I think he could definitely advocate on it too. That it's really popular in our school, and that's just kind of what we do.
But a couple people followed you?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's better than none. So, and congratulations, your story was very powerful.
Thank you.
So.
Any other questions? It's okay if not. Yes. Do you think
I have two questions. Number one, who are the manufacturers and what do we need to do to kind of slow them down? Number two, what effect is social media and what tools do kids have to use social media to help discourage vaping?
So manufacturers, kind of the traditional suspects, right? They've been around for a long time. They've just morphed into kind of new products, new lines. You know, so Philip Morris, Altria, that crew. What can we do? It's like sometimes it feels like whack-a-mole. Like, I'm not gonna lie, right? So you get a law passed. Maybe you have a better definition at what you're trying to define and tax and regulate, and then boom, they come out with a product that doesn't fit that definition, thereby it evades all, state or federal regulations. So, pushing back in the industry, I think requires vigilance. I think it requires being kind of educated in like who they are and what their tactics are so you can spot it. Because a lot of times it doesn't look like the industry, right? Which is very intentional. A great example of that is, recently the industry has decided to kind of take on the language of harm reduction, right? Which is something that you typically don't find in the tobacco industry. You find that in places like public health departments, or in organizations that are working on substance use disorders, this idea of harm reduction. And they've really started to co-opt that language, right? And with new products, right, that they say are less harmful, which is not true. None of their products have been proven or authorized as less harmful, authorized as cessation devices. It's just complete smoke. But that language then gets carried into the offices of state legislators or policymakers at the federal level, and they're like, oh, well, you want a smoke-free world too, right? You don't want people smoking either, And so by you being educated and educating yourself so that you can see it, you then can educate people who are making those policy decisions. I mean, I do think education and understanding the tactics is incredibly important, because if we can't call it out and if we can't articulate it, then we can't encourage policymakers to make better informed decisions, if that makes sense. But it's very complicated.
I wanted to tell him something. In the state of Indiana, tobacco companies spend $300 million a year marketing tobacco products, and we get $9 million a year to fight them. And so it is like whack-a-mole. Also, in the state of Indiana, the cigarette tax or tobacco taxes have not been raised since 1997. So that was the last time. We have some of the lowest taxes in the country, and they haven't been raised since 1997. So those are a couple other things to know. Nationwide, Big Tobacco spends $9 billion a year marketing, primarily the teens, to replace their dying smokers. So.
I think Brooke would be a good one to talk about social media, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm 17 years old, so it's sad to say it, but I'm on social media every day. I'll admit it, guys. But I will say though, yes, you can target your For You page of what's going to pop up, but they have their tactics, they have their marketing and how they're going to do it. They pay brand ambassadors. Some people's life is literally to get paid by companies to promote their products. And sadly, you've seen on social media how maybe someone wasn't a user before, but they got offered a multi-million-dollar deal to promote this product. It happens, unfortunately. It's very sad. But again, like I said, we're on it every day. For my teens out here, who's on social media every day? all of us pretty much. Let's be, and even adults too. But one of the most kind of the biggest things that we've seen recently in the past couple of years that really just triggers me, and I know I've talked to Blake in my community about it a lot, is Zen. On the back of Zen, there is a rewards program. And what's happening a lot of times, unfortunately, is females are going on TikTok and they're taking their boyfriends or their husbands' Zen cans, and they're posting saying, hey girls, don't forget, get your man Zen can and go on the back, scan for rewards and get a free gift card to Starbucks or Ulta, Sephora, somewhere to go shopping. And unfortunately, that's big tobacco. They're getting creative, they're using this new product, they're using their products to target not only the men that are using, but also the female now, the girlfriends, the wives. So